Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a world where almost overnight your identity is just stripped away, replaced by headlines, accusations, a narrative of just unspeakable horror. How do you navigate that? A world that's, already decided you're guilty, even when the truth is maybe still out there, just shrouded in the chaos of really brutal crime.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought.
And it's not hypothetical. It's the reality at the heart of one of the most, perplexing and widely publicized true crime sagas of, really, our time.
Absolutely. A case that just gripped everyone.
It really did. This is a story that captivated the globe, but I promise you there's so much more to it than what you saw in the evening news. We're going to dive deep, really deep, into the layers of this fascinating but deeply unsettling case.
Right.
We're talking about the shocking 2007 murder of British exchange student Meredith Kercher in Perugia, Italy, and the complex international storm that just relentlessly unfolded around it.
Yeah, Perugia. Such a picturesque setting, usually.
Exactly. Picture this. A vibrant study, a broad experience, the dream of living in this beautiful Italian town, a shared apartment full of youthful excitement, and then it's all shattered.
Yeah.
Shattered by a brutal discovery that just irrevocably altered so many lives.
And right at the center of it all.
Right at the epicenter of this maelstrom, tragically, was a young American college student. She quickly became the focus of just intense scrutiny, a lightning rod for accusation, and, the subject of a relentless global media frenzy. Her name, of course, Amanda Knox.
A name everyone recognizes, even now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to go way beyond those sensational headlines, the ones that dominated the news for years. We would explore the bewildering nuances of this case, the often confounding legal processes that dragged on for what felt like an eternity.
Yeah, the legal twists were something else.
And crucially, the profound psychological impacts on everyone caught in his vortex. Yeah. We really aim to understand not just the facts, but how these wildly differing narratives can emerge from essentially the same set of circumstances. The immense, crushing weight of public accusation, and also the astonishing human capacity for resilience, and perhaps most surprisingly, profound forgiveness.
Exactly. And what you'll gain from this deep dive, hopefully, is more than just a timeline of a high-profile crime. We'll delve into the inherent challenges, the unique aspects of international justice systems, shedding light on how evidence is interpreted and, sometimes fundamentally misinterpreted.
That seems key here, misinterpretation.
Definitely. We'll explore the huge, often overlooked psychological toll an ordeal like this takes, not just on the accused, Amanda and Raphael, but on the victim circle. Meredith Kercher's family and friends, the other families involved, even the wider community sort of caught up in the investigation.
Yeah.
This story, at its core, it's a deeply human one. It's fraught with error, emotion, and this enduring yet often elusive quest for answers. It really is a powerful narrative about how easily a certain story can take hold, and how incredibly difficult it is to change that narrative once it does.
Right, just gets set in stone almost. And it all began with that unimaginable discovery that forever stained the picturesque facade of Perugia, a town usually known for its history, its university.
Yeah, its chocolate festival even.
Yeah. But this changed everything. The initial shockwaves just reverberated across continents, starting right there in that seemingly idyllic Italian apartment. On November 2nd, 2007, Meredith Kercher's lifeless body was discovered.
And the scene itself.
Oh, the scene was horrific. I mean, not just a crime, but a brutal, intensely personal act of savagery that would just sear itself into the collective memory. Meredith, a young British student just there trying to study, sexually assaulted, stabbed multiple times.
Just awful.
The sheer brutality, it immediately set this chilling tone for the investigation. It wasn't just murder. It felt like an act of extreme malice, profound depravity.
And the psychological impact of discovering a scene like that is just immense. It permeates every single level of the investigation that followed.
Right, not just the roommates who found her.
No, not at all. It profoundly affects the first responders, the investigators, the prosecutors, the whole community, really. Such brutality, it triggers this immediate, almost visceral emotional response. A primal need for answers, for justice right now.
Understandable.
Yeah, but this intense emotional climate can sometimes quite unconsciously influence those initial police actions. It can even introduce cognitive biases.
How so?
Well, when a crime is so sexually violent, involves multiple stab wounds, There's this immediate perception of extreme malice, like you said, depravity. And this can inadvertently push investigators to seek quick answers. Sometimes, unfortunately, maybe to fit emerging evidence into an emotionally charged narrative rather than sticking strictly to objective facts. The pressure to identify someone, especially in a high-profile case like this, international students, intense media scrutiny right from the start, it becomes overwhelming. And that environment, it can sadly lead to maybe rash judgments or premature conclusions. The human element, that need for resolution, can sometimes override purely forensic logic.
And it was into this exact atmosphere, emotionally charged, high pressure, that Amanda Knox, Meredith's American roommate, was drawn. Her detention quickly turned into this grueling 53-hour interrogation.
53 hours.
Yeah. And what's absolutely critical here, and what became such a central point of contention later, is that she was interrogated without a lawyer present for much of that time.
A key detail.
She later recalled this period as just utter chaos. She described being head on the back of the head. Now, she later clarified this wasn't like a physical blow, more a sharp tap or gesture to shock her, combined with being yelled at by police who repeatedly told her she was a liar.
Intense pressure tactics.
It wasn't just questioning. It felt like an intense, coercive experience, designed pretty effectively, it seems, to break down resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, 53 hours without legal counsel.
Yeah.
It sounds less like an interrogation and more like, well, psychological warfare.
Absolutely. And this brings us right to a crucial psychological aspect: coercive interrogation tactics, and their frankly devastating potential to elicit false confessions.
Right. That's the danger.
It really is. When someone is subjected to prolonged questioning, especially over days and nights, add in sleep deprivation, isolation, intimidation, explicit accusations of lying, their mental state just becomes incredibly vulnerable.
I can only imagine.
And the absence of a lawyer, that removes a critical protective layer. It leaves the individual exposed to just immense psychological pressure. Under that kind of duress, combined with exhaustion, the disorientation from a traumatic event like finding your roommate murdered, the fear of an unfamiliar legal system, people can become profoundly disoriented, desperate, really.
Yeah.
Think about certain techniques, like the Reid technique, used in various forms globally. It often involves isolating suspects, confronting them with accusations, maybe even presenting fabricated evidence, and then offering these minimization themes.
What do you mean by minimization?
Essentially implying that if they confess, the consequences might be less severe, or maybe their actions were more understandable, less culpable, suggesting reasons why they might have done it that seem less awful.
I see. Sort of offering an out.
Exactly. And in Amanda's case, imagine the psychological impact of being told repeatedly, "You are a liar, we know you were there," especially in a foreign country, likely still reeling from the shock of Meredith's death, totally unfamiliar with her rights or the Italian legal process.
It sounds terrifying.
The line between telling the truth and just making the interrogation stop, it starts to blur. The primary goal can shift from stating the facts to simply ending the ordeal. Even if that means agreeing to false statements or implicating themselves, or, like in this case, implicating others.
Which is what happened.
Exactly. False confessions, tragically, are a known outcome of these kinds of tactics. Individuals just desperate for release from that intense pressure, they might sign anything put in front of them, even if it contradicts reality, even if it contradicts their own memory. Sometimes they might even genuinely start to doubt their own recollection under that kind of sustained pressure.
And that's precisely, tragically, what happened here. Following this grueling, extended interrogation, Amanda Knox signed a statement that, well, turned out to be a false confession. This statement devastatingly implicated her former boss, Patrick Lumumba, as the killer. And crucially, it placed herself at the crime scene. This was the immediate, devastating consequence of that coercive environment, a coerced statement that just set off this chain reaction of arrests and public accusations.
Yeah, that initial false confession really did set off a cascading chain reaction. On November 6, 2007, just days after the murder, Amanda Knox, her boyfriend of only about a week, Rafael Solicito, and Patrick Lumumba were all arrested. Suspicion of manslaughter and sexual violence.
So swift.
The Italian legal system, in its initial phase, moved very quickly. However, Lumumba's situation shifted dramatically just 2 weeks later. His alibi was corroborated, he had witnesses, he was released.
Okay, so he was cleared relatively fast.
Relatively fast, yes, but this rapid exoneration, while obviously a huge relief for him, it really highlights the immediate and profound damage that can be inflicted by a false accusation, especially in a high-profile murder case like this.
Right. The damage was already done in some ways.
Absolutely. The psychological burden of being falsely accused, even briefly, it's immense. It can shatter a person's reputation, cause irreparable harm to their business. He owned a bar, their personal relationships, and inflict this deep, lingering trauma, even after innocence is proven.
Yeah, his business was hit hard, wasn't it?
Immediately impacted, his standing in the community tarnished overnight, and undoing that public perception. It's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, even with legal vindication. That stain of suspicion, once it's cast, it can cling for a lifetime.
So we have this initial theory, quick arrests, and then the swift public exoneration of Patrick Lumumba. But as we know in this case, the investigation was far, far from over. A new suspect emerged, and this is where the narrative truly began to twist and turn in some bewildering ways.
Yeah, the whole landscape shifted again.
It really did. The legal landscape of the case shifted dramatically with the introduction of this new suspect, Rudy Guade. His arrest in Germany, just over 2 weeks after the murder, was a truly pivotal moment. Primarily because of the crucial evidence found at the crime scene.
The physical evidence.
Exactly. His fingerprints were discovered there. Not just, vaguely at the scene, but specifically on Meredith Kercher's belongings. And even more significantly, his DNA was found inside and on Meredith Kercher's body.
Inside and on the body. That's incredibly significant forensic evidence.
Right. This wasn't just circumstantial. This was powerful physical evidence directly connecting him to the brutal crime in a pretty undeniable way, you'd think.
And what's truly striking here, and a point that really highlights the complexities of criminal investigations, is how DNA evidence typically acts. It's usually seen as this objective, almost irrefutable force.
Right, the gold standard, almost.
Yeah. Exactly. When fingerprints and DNA are found at a crime scene, especially DNA inside and on the victim, it usually funnels the focus very directly onto that individual. This kind of evidence should, in theory, clarify and simplify an investigation, provide a clear path forward.
But not here.
Well, here it raises this profound and frankly disturbing question. If Rudy Guade's DNA was definitively at the scene and inside and on the victim, why did the previous theories involving Amanda Knox and Rafael Solicito persist with such intensity?
That is the question.
Why wasn't that initial narrative immediately reevaluated, or maybe even completely abandoned in light of this new, compelling, and arguably much more definitive evidence?
That seems logical that it should have been.
It does, and this is precisely where the psychology of confirmation bias, even within investigative teams, can become such a powerful, distorting factor.
Explain that a bit more.
It's the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirming your existing beliefs, rather than challenging them. It's often unconscious. So instead of asking, okay, does Guade's presence contradict our existing theory about Amanda and Rafael? The unconscious question might become, how does Guade fit into our existing theory with Amanda and Rafael? See the difference?
Yeah, I do. It's about fitting the new piece into the old puzzle, not starting a new puzzle.
Precisely. And that can be a very dangerous path in an investigation.
So despite this compelling DNA evidence pointing squarely at Guade, his path through the Italian legal system was, well, distinct and notably faster than the others.
Yes, he chose a different route.
He opted for a fast-track trial. An abbreviated procedure, it's called, in the Italian system, separate from Amanda and Rafael. That started in September 2008.
Right, which involves waiving certain rights, like a full jury trial, often in exchange for a potentially reduced sentence if convicted.
And he was found guilty. Murder and sexual assault. His initial sentence was pretty hefty, 30 years. That was later reduced to 16 years on appeal. And then, in November 2021, he was actually released from prison. He served only 13 years, apparently due to good behavior.
13 years for that crime. After all that, it's noteworthy.
It is. But what's truly remarkable here, psychologically speaking, is that despite the overwhelming physical evidence, his fingerprints, his DNA directly linking him to the crime, and the victim, Rudy Guade, still maintains his innocence in Meredith Kercher's murder, even today.
Still maintains his innocence after conviction, after serving time. That persistent denial in the face of such conclusive forensic proof, it really can reveal several profound psychological dynamics.
Like what?
Well, it could be a form of deep-seated denial, a powerful defense mechanism just to cope with the sheer enormity and moral weight of the crime. For some individuals, the internal narrative they construct about themselves and their actions becomes so entrenched that it just overrides external reality.
So they convince themselves.
Possibly. Or it could reflect a severely distorted self-perception, where admitting guilt, even after conviction, is just an impossible psychological hurdle to overcome, especially if they've constructed this alternative reality for themselves that completely absolves them. This persistence of denial, even post-conviction, post-release, it underscores the profound psychological need for some individuals to maintain an image of innocence, no matter what the objective facts presented in a courtroom say. It's really a testament to the mind's ability to protect itself, even when faced with overwhelming truth.
Okay, so you have Quaid convicted, irrefutable DNA evidence, fingerprints, DNA all over the crime scene on Meredith herself. But here's where the case takes another truly perplexing turn, one that defied logic for so many people watching.
Yeah, this is a major point of contention.
Despite Quaid's conviction, despite the strong DNA evidence pointing solely to him as the perpetrator of the assault and murder, the prosecution surprisingly just continued to allege that Kercher had been murdered during a disagreement related to a sex game gone wrong, a theory that still implicated Amanda Knox and Rafael Salcido.
They stuck to it.
This narrative, despite its frankly contested nature and the new evidence, was heavily and persistently pushed in the public sphere and in court.
And this raises an incredibly important question, doesn't it? One that gets right to the heart of prosecutorial psychology, maybe even systemic issues. Why would a prosecution stick so rigidly to a particular narrative, especially when compelling objective DNA evidence pointed so strongly in another direction?
Yeah, why? What are the possible reasons?
Psychologically, there could be several powerful motivations at play. One is, as we touched on, confirmation bias. Investigators, prosecutors, having formed that initial theory, might unconsciously seek out and interpret evidence in a way that confirms it, even dismissing or downplaying contradictory facts like Quaid's lone DNA.
So, tunnel vision, essentially.
It can manifest like that, yes. It's not necessarily a malicious act, often it isn't, but it's a natural human tendency that can get really amplified under immense pressure.
Okay, what else?
Beyond that, there can be a strong desire, maybe even a need, to present a cohesive, dramatic, and emotionally compelling story, especially to a jury, and certainly to the public via the media.
The sex game gone wrong theory was certainly dramatic.
It was nothing if not sensational, right? It tapped into these primal fears and fascinations. It painted a picture of reckless youth, alleged drug use, this exotic, dangerous underbelly, which played directly into certain stereotypes, perhaps. And the prosecution didn't just allege it, they built this detailed, if largely speculative, narrative around it. They suggested a specific sequence: drug use, a forced sexual encounter escalating into violence, possibly involving multiple attackers. They presented seemingly minor details, like a bra clasp found months later, remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. The contaminated evidence arguments came later.
Right. They tried to present things like that as pivotal, attempting to weave them into this sensational tapestry, even when other, perhaps more mundane or forensic-based explanations for such evidence were plausible or even likely.
So crafting a story versus following the evidence.
It can sometimes look like that from the outside. There's also psychologically a reluctance to admit a previous investigative path might have been flawed or incomplete. Public pressure, particularly in a huge, sensational, irrational case like this, can also contribute massively. There's a psychological investment in the initial narrative. Pivoting away from it might be perceived as a sign of weakness or incompetence or even error, which can be politically and professionally damaging for those involved.
All reputations are on the line.
Exactly. And this continued adherence to the sex game gone wrong theory, despite grade A's separate conviction based on physical evidence, it profoundly shaped public perception of Amanda Knox and Rafael Salcido. It created this intensely sensationalized, deeply damaging media frenzy around them. It contributed to a deeply negative public image that was incredibly difficult to shake, irrespective of the legal facts that were emerging about Quaid. The narrative, in many ways, it took on a life of its own. It became almost more powerful than the evidence itself, certainly in the court of public opinion.
And the psychological weight of all that must have just been unbearable. Amanda Knox and Rafael Salcido, they remained indicted on murder charges. And it's critical to remember they spent 2 full years in prison before their first joint trial even began.
2 years in pretrial detention, that's a very long time.
It is. This was not a swift process for them. It was this grueling, protracted ordeal. Then in 2009, an Italian jury found them guilty, charges of sexual violence and murder, and the sentences were incredibly harsh. Amanda Knox got 26 years. Rafael Salcido got 25 years.
Imagine just for a moment the profound psychological impact of getting a sentence like that, handed down to young people, early 20s, who have consistently, vehemently maintained their innocence.
Devastating.
It's not just about the physical loss of freedom, which is immense in itself. It's the crushing weight of public condemnation, the shattering of your identity, and this profound sense of injustice. Being deemed guilty of a horrific crime you genuinely believe you didn't commit.
Yeah.
The emotional toll of being imprisoned for years, constantly fighting for your truth against a system that has already convicted you, it's immense. It can lead to deep-seated trauma, chronic anxiety, a pervasive sense of betrayal, and a fundamental questioning of justice itself. That feeling of being trapped, with your entire future seemingly stolen, it would be an almost unbearable psychological burden. It's a constant, daily battle just to preserve your sense of self, your sanity, when the world outside has already condemned you.
Then, in 2011, came this stunning reversal. A moment of, well, fleeting triumph amidst all the turmoil. During their first appeal, both Amanda Knox and Rafaela Solicito were acquitted and freed.
A huge moment.
After 4 agonizing years in an Italian prison, Amanda Knox immediately returned to the United States. This really should have been the end of it, right? A triumphant return home after this unimaginable nightmare.
You would think so.
But that quiet vindication, it was so short-lived. The source material note she faced, even more media attention and public scrutiny upon returning home. It was almost like her freedom from prison just transitioned into a different kind of public incarceration.
That illustrates an incredibly difficult psychological paradox, a cruel irony, really. On one hand, you've been acquitted, you're released from prison, you can finally breathe the air of freedom. The euphoria of that moment, the immense relief must have been just overwhelming. But on the other hand, the intense, persistent public judgment, the relentless media scrutiny, it didn't vanish with the acquittal. In fact, as you said, it escalated. The media attention when she came back was relentless, a continuation of her incarceration, but in this different, maybe more insidious form.
How does someone cope with that kind of whiplash? Acquitted, but still condemned in the public eye.
Psychologically, it's a constant battle against this pervasive, often unseen enemy, public opinion. The trauma of the imprisonment and the accusation, it doesn't just disappear with an acquittal, it lingers deeply. Instead, you're thrust back into this public arena where millions, maybe, still believe you are guilty, where your name is synonymous with a horrific crime, where the narrative created by the prosecution and amplified endlessly by the media continues to define you, regardless of the court's decision. This creates a profound sense of isolation, a constant struggle to reclaim your own identity, to define yourself beyond the sensationalized media caricature that's been so powerfully constructed. It's a kind of psychological imprisonment that persists long, long after the physical one is ended. It makes true freedom incredibly elusive.
But the legal labyrinth, true to its name, was far from over. In 2013, Italy's highest court, the Court of Cassation, which, it's important to note, reviews judicial procedure and how the law was applied, not the facts of the case, controversially overturned that acquittal.
Right, they ordered a retrial.
Exactly. Ordered a retrial for Meredith Kercher's murder. Amanda Knox remained in the U.S. as this retrial unfolded. She was either unable or perhaps understandably unwilling to return to Italy for it. And then once again in 2014, she was reconvicted in absentia, meaning in her absence, this time receiving an even harsher sentence, 28 and a half years. Rafaela Solicito received 25 years again.
Just staggering, the back and forth.
What kind of psychological scar does that leave? The constant uncertainty, the knowledge that at any moment your freedom could just be snatched away again by a decision happening thousands of miles away, one you can't even directly influence.
It's an almost unimaginable psychological burden. It's a form of torture by legal uncertainty, really. To have been acquitted, to have felt that immense relief of freedom, to have started tentatively to rebuild your life, and then to have that freedom, that very legal vindication, yanked away and replaced with a new conviction. All while you're thousands of miles away, unable to directly participate or defend yourself in person. It's an extreme form of psychological cruelty.
Yeah, cruel seems like the right word.
The constant legal uncertainty, the fear of re-imprisonment just looming over her, it would create this pervasive state of anxiety, hypervigilance. It's like being in a perpetual state of legal limbo, never truly free, always under the shadow of a system that can at any moment pull you right back into its grasp. This cycle, conviction, acquittal, reconviction, it would profoundly erode trust, not just in the legal system itself, but potentially in the very idea of justice. It's just a relentless assault on your sense of safety, your future, forcing you to live with this sword of Damocles hanging over your head for years and years.
Finally, though, after years of this torturous legal back and forth, the ultimate resolution came. In 2015, Italy's highest court of appeals, the same court of cassation, overturned both murder convictions, this time definitively, finally bringing the main legal saga to an end.
The final word on the murder charges.
Yes, it was, for all intents and purposes, a full exoneration on the murder charges, bringing some measure, finally, of closure to nearly a decade of these intense legal battles. However, there was one last remaining conviction.
Ah, yes, the slander charge.
It's exactly. Her slander conviction against Patrick Lumumba, stemming right back to that initial false accusation she made during her coerced interrogation way back in 2007, finalized in 2009. She was sentenced to 3 years for it, but crucially, did not have to serve additional jail time because of the 4 years she had already served in prison.
And this final conviction for slander against Patrick Lumumba, it's actually a critical piece. It kind of elegantly connects the dots of this entire complex psychological journey we've been talking about.
So,
It highlights the devastating, cascading ripple effects of that initial coercive interrogation and the false confession it produced. That original psychological distress, the extreme duress she was under in that interrogation room, directly led to an action implicating Lumumba, which had real and lasting consequences. For him, unjustly staining his reputation, and ultimately for her own legal record, too.
So even though the murder charge was gone, this remained.
Exactly. Even after being exonerated for murder, the consequence of that coerced statement remained. This powerfully illustrates how a moment of extreme vulnerability forced by intense psychological pressure can lead to actions that have legal and personal repercussions years and years down the line, affecting not just the individual under duress, but innocent others as well.
Right, Lumumba was completely innocent.
Completely. It's a stark reminder that false confessions don't just affect the person giving them, they create this ripple of harm that can impact multiple innocent individuals and reshape the entire narrative of a case, sometimes irrevocably. It really speaks to the fragility of justice when human psychology is pushed to its absolute limits, and how even, perhaps, well-intentioned interrogators can inadvertently cause profound, lasting damage.
So, the legal battle for the murder charges finally concluded, definitive exoneration on that front. But as we know, a person's life isn't just defined by legal verdicts or courtrooms. Amanda Knox's journey beyond the verdict into advocacy, and perhaps most astonishingly, into these profound acts of forgiveness. That's maybe the most compelling chapter of all, a real testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
It truly is remarkable what came next.
Years after her final exoneration, this astonishing development occurred, one that seems almost, well, unfathomable. Amanda Knox began a relationship via email, initially with none other than prosecutor Giuliano Mignini.
The prosecutor who pursued her conviction so fiercely.
The very man, the one who had so fiercely pursued her conviction for so long. And then in 2023, she took it even further. She returned to Italy to meet him in person for the first time since their intense courtroom confrontations.
Wow, that takes something extraordinary.
It really does. She made this profound statement about forgiveness during this meeting. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Forgiveness is a natural consequence of realizing how fragile and precious another human is." I immediately sort of stepped into mom mode. And I was like, I'm not just forgiving you, I'm holding you, I care about you. And that changed everything.
That quote, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah?
This aspect of the story is, without any exaggeration, psychologically profound and incredibly rare. Forgiveness in such extreme circumstances, after years of wrongful accusation, imprisonment, relentless public vilification, largely driven by the legal system he represented, it's an extraordinary feat.
What does it take psychologically to get to that point? To forgive someone who contributed so significantly to years of your life being unjustly taken away?
It often requires an extraordinary capacity for empathy, a conscious detachment from bitterness, from resentment, a profound focus on one's own healing and emotional liberation, rather than on retribution or just holding on to that justifiable anger.
Yeah, letting go of the anger must be key.
Absolutely. And her description, that phrase, stepped into mom mode, it offers this unique and deeply insightful window into her empathetic process. It suggests a move beyond her own personal hurt to this broader, more mature understanding of shared humanity, shared vulnerability, even for someone who caused her such immense suffering.
Seeing him as just human, fragile.
Exactly. It implies a kind of radical empathy, a cognitive reframing where she actively chose to see his actions perhaps not just as personal attacks directed solely at her, but maybe as driven by his own fallibility, his own sense of duty, however misguided, or the systemic pressures he himself was under. It's not about excusing the actions, let's be clear.
No, of course not.
But it's about releasing herself from the consuming grip of bitterness, because that bitterness can often be far more damaging long-term to the victim than the original trauma itself.
That makes sense.
From a psychological perspective, this really aligns with concepts of post-traumatic growth, where individuals who experience immense trauma sometimes find a new sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for life, or even a significant shift in their values. They transform adversity into a catalyst for profound personal change.
Finding meaning in the suffering.
In a way, yes. And while it's certainly not the primary goal, an act of forgiveness like this can also, potentially, offer a measure of redemption or closure for the person being forgiven. It demonstrates the transformative power of human connection, even emerging from the most adversarial contexts imaginable. It really speaks to a maturity born out of immense suffering, transforming that pain into an understanding that transcends individual grievance and embraces this wider, deeper compassion.
And as part of this journey of reconciliation, maybe healing, testament perhaps to bonds forged in the fires of shared trauma, she also reunited with her ex-boyfriend and co-defendant, Rafael Solito, nearly 15 years after their initial conviction.
Another significant reunion.
It seems that connection, that profound, life-altering experience they shared, despite all the pain it brought, remained this powerful force in both their lives.
Understandably so. That shared experience is unique.
Beyond these deeply personal acts of reconciliation, Amanda Knox has remarkably channeled her experiences into a powerful new purpose: activism and authorship.
Yeah, she's become quite a voice.
She really has. She's written 2 compelling books: Waited to be Heard back in 2013, which was her harrowing personal account of the ordeal. And she has another one, Free, My Search for Meaning, set for release in 2025, which sounds like it'll be a deeper, maybe more philosophical exploration of her journey. She's also become this tireless criminal justice reform activist, passionately involved with significant organizations like the Frederick Douglass Project for Justice, the Innocence Center, working diligently to try and prevent others from enduring similar injustices.
Using her platform.
Exactly. Plus, she hosts her own insightful podcast, Hard Knocks with Amanda Knox, where she explores complex issues of justice, human experience. And she participated in that big 2016 Netflix documentary about her legal battles, which allowed her story, her perspective, to reach an even wider audience.
And this transformation from experiencing profound personal trauma to becoming a public advocate, it's a powerful and actually frequently observed psychological drive.
Oh, really? It's come.
Relatively speaking, yes, among those who survive extreme injustice or trauma. When individuals experience profound suffering, especially on such a public scale, there's often this deep-seated human need to find meaning and purpose in that suffering. For many, channeling that pain into helping others avoid similar fates becomes this central, almost redemptive mission.
Turning bad into good.
Essentially, yes. It's a way of reclaiming agency, reclaiming control over a narrative that was once entirely controlled by external forces. The media, the legal system, public opinion. By becoming an author, an activist, a podcast host, she's not only processing her own trauma in a public forum, but she's actively shaping the conversation around wrongful conviction, due process, coercive interrogations, criminal justice reform.
Taking back the narrative.
Precisely. This public work becomes a profound form of psychological integration, where that immense past suffering isn't just endured, it's leveraged for a greater good. It allows her to forge a new identity, one rooted in resilience, contribution, and being a powerful voice for change. It's really a testament to how trauma, while profoundly damaging, can also sometimes be a catalyst for immense personal growth and public contribution.
And amidst all this, the public advocacy, her ongoing work, her continued engagement with such a weighty past, she has also somehow, against all odds, profoundly rebuilt her personal life.
Which is also incredibly important.
She married author Christopher Robinson back in 2018, and they've since welcomed 2 children into their lives. Their daughter, Eureka Muse Knox Robinson, born in 2021, and their son, Echo Knox Robinson, born just last year, 2023.
And these personal details, they're incredibly important because they ground the narrative. They ground her narrative in a tangible, deeply human reality. They show a life not just defined by past trauma and that ongoing public interest, but one actively rebuilt, characterized by new beginnings, love, and the profound joy and, let's face it, normalcy of family.
Yeah, finding normalcy after all that.
Psychologically, having children, building a family, it can be a profound step in healing and moving forward, creating new meaning, new purpose that transcends past suffering. It demonstrates a resilience that allows for the creation of joy and, yes, normalcy, even after such extraordinary adversity. It's really a powerful testament to the human capacity for growth, for finding happiness and fulfillment despite those indelible scars, and for shaping a future that is, finally, truly her own.
What an extraordinary, complex journey we've traced today. Just incredible. We've delved into the unbelievable twists and turns of this true crime saga, starting with a brutal murder that shocked the world, moving through a multi-year legal battle fraught with coercive interrogations, false accusations, constantly shifting verdicts, and ultimately that definitive exoneration for the murder charges.
A legal roller coaster doesn't even begin to cover it.
Right, and running parallel to that agonizing legal odyssey has been this equally profound journey of personal transformation, marked by astonishing resilience, tireless advocacy, and those truly remarkable acts of forgiveness we discussed.
Throughout this deep dive, we've tried to weave in the psychological threads that connect every single turn of this bewildering case. The inherent fragility of memory, especially confession under extreme duress, the immense, often distorting power of media narratives and public perception, the enduring resilience of the human spirit when faced with unimaginable adversity, and the incredibly complex, often imperfect path of justice itself. This case really serves as a stark, indelible reminder of how deeply human factors, everything from cognitive biases and systemic error to profound compassion and even stubborn denial, how they can influence the entire course of a legal process, shaping lives, shaping narratives for decades. It pushes us, I think, to consider not just the facts of a crime, but the very nature of truth itself.
Absolutely. This case really forces us, to confront not just the facts, but the very nature of truth, perception, and what it truly means to be free, even when the world seems determined to refuse to let go. So the question we leave you with is this. What does this astonishing story tell us about the immense weight of public opinion versus the meticulous, often painstaking pursuit of justice? And how might that shape your view of information, of accusation in our increasingly interconnected, often overwhelming world today?
Something to truly ponder.